I was a witness to the Court of Special Appeals in Annapolis, September 7th. And Nancy Forrester was arguing the oral argument for the ex post facto parts of these sex offender laws, that you can't go back and add punishment to someone who's already been convicted.
For those that don't know who Nancy is,
Yeah.
can we let everybody, because there's a lot of new people here.
Well, for what I know, she's very nice. She was a former defense.
She was a former public defender. She was
and
the head, I forget the right term for it, the head public offender,
Right.
public defender at one time, and was very proud of the fact that she actually got fired from that because she was taking a higher moral stand than a lot of them were.
She was fired for having a conscience.
Right, but she's sort of become the default champion of some of these issues, and here in a lot of cases.
She was at the Court of Special Appeals when she heard the argument. That's how she
she
met
got
the
involved
attorney
in
in the original Doe case.
Yeah, she got involved in it at that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument is the constitutionality of ex post facto laws. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I was intrigued. You can see it on the Court of Appeals website. They have a webcast, and you can see the whole hearing. Nancy spoke first on behalf of Doe, which also represents all of us, for 30 minutes, and the state spoke for 30 minutes, and then there was a 10-minute rebuttal that Nancy was given. It was very exciting to see. I think I've never been to the Supreme Court, and it's what Maryland's Supreme Court is, their highest court. I didn't get to see Nancy's face from where I was sitting, and if you watch the video, you can probably see my face looking up at them. But I really was watching very closely all the individual justices, and they were paying attention. And I think that they asked some serious questions that were surprising to me. One justice had asked, well, would it be great if there was some way that people could get off the registry to be able to go to some sort of a board and present their case to be removed? So when you hear something like that, it does really give you hope that there is people. Once various politicians or caring politicians and the general public find out what is really going on to people on the sex offender registry and what we're required to do, they're shocked. I spoke with members of my congregation and to tell them my story, and one of the oldest ones there, who I thought was going to be an old curmudgeon, he could not believe it. He says, this is like lepers. You're being treated like a leper. It's horrible. And I was surprised at how that is. I'm also surprised that I don't know that, I think the negative politicians, the negative politics transcends both parties. Because I'm finding there are conservatives who see the conservative issue of too much government, too much intrusion in people's individual freedoms as being supportive for us. I don't think that we should write off the Republicans or conservatives. And I've seen Democrats, as we had in the House of Legislation, the Judicial Subcommittee hearings, the wonderful Thomas Conaway, who was a Democrat who was very hostile and said some horrible things. Some of those things that were said at the last session and previous sessions, Robin and we had sat and listened to everything and downloaded little snippets of information, and Nancy had used them in the brief. The issue of saying that a senator saying, we know, that these laws are here to be put on the back end. Now, once you say something like that, that means you're admitting that this is retroactive, ex post facto, and it's unconstitutional. Conaway said, it's because of what you did that you are being treated this way. It's clearly, the courts took very close notice to that. When the state presented their case, they stammered. They did not have all their information. I think there's an attitude that the state probably had, just like a lot of the legislators have as well, is that it's a win-win for them to do whatever they can to protect children. I think that when they really get challenged, when people come forward with a case like this, or when we come forward at the legislature to testify, they're completely thrown back. They figure they can just waltz right through with all these laws and do as they please. But we're making a really big difference that way. With the Court of Appeals, back to the main topic of that, we won't know. We really don't know when a decision will be made. From what Nancy Forster told me right after, she was absolutely thrilled. She really felt that she did well, and I think so too. The courts gave her questions that were, in a sense, supportive of us. I mean, they were the kind of, positive questions. With the state, it was a bit more challenging, and they couldn't answer the questions, and they really looked foolish. They thought they didn't even need a case. They could just walk in and say, what are you talking about? These people need to be locked up. In fact, the state even brought details of Doe, which has nothing to do with the case. It's the whole point of ex post facto, trying to tell us how dangerous this guy is. That has nothing to do with the appeals case. And the judges saw that, and they were listening very intently, and I really think that we will get a positive decision. We don't know when. I hope it's by the end of the year. Hopefully we'll have one of us there when it's read, and we'll keep everybody informed on that, because this will make a big difference. This will make a big difference. Yes?
I don't need the mic, you can repeat it. What's the scope of a positive decision? What's included and what's not included in the decision on that case for the rest of us?
That registration.
Repeat the question,
Oh, I'm sorry.
because he didn't have a mic.
I'll take the mic.
Then I can remember the question again.
There you go.
I'll take the mic, it'll help you remember.
David might know more than I do on this issue.
What is the scope of the decision?
What-
In other words, usually
makes
these
it positive?
decisions are very restricted to the case itself
Yeah.
or a certain
Right.
set of circumstances.
Right.
Okay, I could, if you want.
Why not let Brenda do that, because she knows more about it. I'm sure it has to do with the fact that retroactivity and punishment.
Yeah, it can go the whole range. You're right. It could be very narrow. It could be. They could try to. You want me to stand up still? It could be very narrow. The narrowest would probably be they somehow find a way to just say it only affects Doe, but we think that's very unlikely. On the other extreme, they could say clearly the laws that were passed in 2009, 2010 were a retroactive increase in punishment. That's the question. That's the main question is, were those laws punishment? And if so, then that means they're retroactive punishment. So if they determine that the 2009, 2010 laws constitute punishment, then they would also then say it's retroactive punishment. So the best case scenario would be anyone affected by 2009, 2010 changes in legislation where their term of registration increased or they got pulled on, any of that would potentially see that reversing and going back to whatever it was. So you've got a huge range as far as your decision goes. I think what Bob is saying is that Nancy feels very good that it's not going to be at the narrowest end. It is going to be probably at least in the middle somewhere, but we still don't know. It just depends again on what they decide. The whole point of the court decision is to be as narrow as possible. That's what Supreme Courts do. But they just from, and if you watch it, you can see them asking those kind of questions about the retroactivity and what does it mean. And, they were very sympathetic overall. So we're hopeful, but you're just not going to know until they decide.
I mean, they asked a lot of questions about, is it punishment?
Yeah. Oh, they asked that directly of
And if
the
they
state
decide
guy.
that, yes, this is punishment,
Yeah.
then that's a big deal.
One of them was, can you think of any other, they asked to the state
Right.
representative, can you think of any other registry scheme, registry process that has this much in terms of penalty, that puts this much burden on the person having to register?
No, he said, he went, no, I don't think so.
I mean, literally, that was his response. And I forget, he did finally say something. I suppose not, but then he's off in another direction. And I thought, you're dead.
I mean, he was saying that, this guy, let's say Doe is in his 40s or 50s or something. He could very likely offend when he's 80. It's highly likely that he'll
highly
do
likely.
that. That's what the state said. So he has to be on a lifetime registration because he may not offend for 20 years, but you wait 30 years from now when this man is 80, he's going to be trouble. So,
Yeah.
and the courts just look like, I don't know how aware the courts are of these laws, but I really think that they were taken aback by what's going on.
Yeah, well, the other thing, you mentioned, you touched on this, this whole idea of okay, Mr. Doe is still dangerous, or could be dangerous because we know that the recidivism rate is through the roof, yada, yada. And they brought all this up. They went through his history of, what they thought his offense was.
He brought up the victim as well, and the victim's name.
And the
victim's first name.
Yeah. So all of this comes up, but this was not a trial court where that was supposed to even be, necessary. The questions at hand were, was the law that was enacted in 2009, 2010 retroactively, is that punishment? And that it doesn't matter what he did. It's irrelevant to the question. So the fact that they brought it up, and the judges called him on it at least once. Well, okay, we know, I don't need to hear it. I'm asking you, this. So, so it's irrelevant, and they cannot use that in their decision.
I don't think they'll use much of anything that the state said. And I think they'll base it on pretty much Nancy's brief. But still, it could be right down in the middle.
Okay.
All right, questions on the hearing? Yeah. Get the microphone.
Yeah.
I first of all have a comment. My name is Jay from Owings Mills. My first comment is anytime I have heard anyone who is on the legal part, whether it's the top all the way down to the policeman that you have to register with, they don't have a clue as to what all this means and what they're supposed to do. And it's very clear that they're just shooting from the hip. The question is, was there any question from the judges that would indicate that they were concerned if their decision was made such and such about the scope of the people that would affect? In other words, would they, if they were to make that everything is retroactive is no good, did they ask how many people would this affect, or do you know, or would Nancy know, if their decision would be based on the number of people that would properly be affected by this? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. I don't know that that's something that the courts would really necessarily need to address.
I don't remember them asking.
But they did. There was an issue which I think may expedite the decision, that there are a number of cases in the Court of Special Appeals, which is just below the Court of Appeals, that are hinging on a decision on this case. So it will definitely be affecting a lot of cases that are on hold right now. So that's for that reason I think they've taken it very seriously too. There you go. Yeah, they did mention you by name.
Sure.
Just a quick comment from listening. Other states. This is funny talking to the mic that doesn't work. It's working. The advice from other states is whether it's interpreted narrowly or broadly, it almost certainly won't be everything this community is looking for. So this community needs to be prepared to launch additional judicial attacks wherever there's a weakness on the constitutional basis. So I don't think we should look at this as we need to stay vigilant and keep at it. Things happen incrementally, bit by bit, including in courts.
This question probably subsumes all other questions. Are these judges elected?
No.
No, they're appointed by the
They're
governor,
appointed.
aren't they?
Okay, that's tremendous.
Appointed is much better, obviously.
That's why Nancy said this is where if you're going to win, you're going to win here, because these judges are appointed. They won't have to worry about the popular.
Which is like the U.S. Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there was one interesting thing that Nancy said at the beginning. She was all excited because there was a retired judge who was just sitting in for our case only, and apparently he was very liberal in the sense of supporting. She feels she'd support our side. So that's one I'm pretty sure we've got. One looked like he was sleeping, but I think he finally woke. He was actually quite bright. So it was fascinating. If you ever have a chance, go down there and check it out. It was quite exciting. It is Court of Appeals, Maryland Court of Appeals. Just Google that.
Can you send a link and put a link in the...
Do we have a link on the site
It's
already?
on the site.
I think it'll take you right to it. But if you go to Court of Appeals, Maryland, and it'll say webcast. You click that, and then you're going to want September 7th, Doe versus
Department of Public Safety.
DPSCS. Yeah, DPSCS.
WCBS.
Is there a time limit the judges have to
I don't think they, you know, they could take years if
Nope.
they felt like it, but I seriously don't think that's going to happen.
No. That's
And,
typical.
you know, as David said, you know, however it turns out, if it becomes an incredible success for us, that's certainly no reason to stop fighting, but to start fighting. And if it goes against us, that's still a reason to keep on fighting, you know. So this is just another little stepping stone towards success down the road. We're not going to ever get instant success, but I think that everything we do in these last couple of years has been tremendous. We've made a big difference, I think.